This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How we doing today on this hump day? Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in and watching us on The Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central. You're watching us on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. You can check me out at Joe Gaither6 or whatever your favorite social media platform is right there at Joe Gaither6. Go ahead and send me a comment, question, query, or complaint. You can see my man Bruce in the background getting settled in for a show. We are also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon if you want to check us out as a podcast and don't want to watch the show. We appreciate you subscribe, rating, and reviewing the show on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about Alabama's commitment from Mal Waldrep yesterday, the offensive lineman out of Central Phoenix City. And we're going to talk about two Alabama basketball matchups that have been confirmed as of this morning. If you're looking for any Alabama basketball news, you can always follow my man Blake Byler at Blake Byler45. He's got you all covered. I woke up to a bunch of Blake Byler tweets about Alabama's two newest matchups getting confirmed, the SEC-ACC Challenge getting confirmed, and one of Alabama's opponents at the Players Era Invitational out in Las Vegas getting confirmed as well. So let's start with recruiting. We'll go to basketball, and we'll finish with our friend Matt Guzman of SpursCentral. SpursCentral on SI. He covers all kinds of NBA action, but you can read him at SpursCentral on SI. So let's start with Mal Waldrep. Mal Waldrep became Alabama's 13th commit, 13 or 14. Alabama football commits. I think it's up to. I think we're at 13, right? Yeah, no, 14. He was the 14th commit. I'm sorry. He became Alabama's 14th commit. He became Alabama's 4th commit in the span of a week. You got quarterback Keelan Russell. You got cornerback Chuck McDonald. You got offensive lineman Michael Carroll. And now you got offensive lineman Mal Waldrep. Mal Waldrep out of Central Phoenix City High School. Here we are in the box. We can start watching some of his highlights if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. We're going to watch this tackle. He plays left tackle for the Central Phoenix City Red Devils, and they went undefeated last season, Class 7A state champions right here in the state of Alabama. So he's playing for a prestigious program. He played last year with two Alabama commits, or now signees, two freshmen, Isaiah Fega and Red Morgan. You've heard a lot about Red Morgan already making impacts in the defensive backfield, and I think Isaiah Fega will do the same on the defensive line. But you see people talking about three-star recruit, blah, blah, blah. He's no good. Okay, I don't think I agree with some of those assessments as you're watching his tape. You got to look at some of his offers. He had offers to Florida, to Tennessee, to Auburn, to Clemson. So, look, a lot of the big-name programs are after him. You can say three-star or not, but at 6'5", 320 pounds, starting left tackle for a 7A state championship team in Alabama, this guy can play. And it remains to be seen whether he's going to be a tackle or guard once he gets to the college level. But watch him right here. Or if you're listening to us, let me describe him. He plays with better pad level than Michael Carroll did when we watched the Michael Carroll's huddle tape. He plays with better pad level. I like his feet. He's lower in his hips. In a lot of, granted, this is highlight tape, so you don't see much of the negative. But he plays lower in his hips than Michael Carroll does. One thing, okay, he's not as much of a finisher as Michael Carroll. Michael Carroll was driving a lot of guys off the ball when we talked about him on Monday. We talked about that his kind of skill sets on Monday. But you see him here, he's very technically sound. And so I really like what you see here from the Central Phoenix City left tackle. He gets out in space pretty well. I mean, obviously, he's not a pulling guard like Michael Carroll is pulling left and right up there in his high school, Central Bucks East in Pennsylvania. But Mal Waldrep looks like, okay, he can do everything that Central Phoenix City is asking him to do at a very high level. I'm not so sure that Kalen DeBoer has a little diamond in the rough here, and I wonder why he's listed as a 3-star prospect. I got a couple of theories of why, and granted, this is just my opinion from over here in Tuscaloosa. I haven't gone to see him play in person, and I don't know him. My first theory is I wonder how much he's camping at these national camps, at these big camps where he's getting evaluated. My second theory is maybe arm length. Might not have as long of an arm length and wingspan as you'd like for a tackle, which is why I think he might end up moving to guard when he comes to Tuscaloosa. At 6'5", 320, you'll look at Alabama's 2 starting guards right now, Jaden Roberts and Tyler Booker. Both those guys are 6'5". And so Mal Waldrep, I think you can see him bump down and be a really, really effective guard. I like he's got a nice kickback here in pass protection. So I think that he's a quality player, but he just might not be. Look, he's a 3-star prospect. I think he's probably being evaluated as a tackle, where his future might end up as a guard at the college level. So for Alabama, you've now got 2 offensive linemen, and people can talk about star ratings, this, that, and the other, but you look at the Alabama recruiting class, and you're starting to fill some things out. You're at 14 commits, and you're probably going to get anywhere between 10 and 14 more. You're probably going to end up with 23 to 28 commitments in the class of 2025. And so you still got room to improve, but you look at the composite rankings from 24/7 Sports, and Alabama sitting there at number 3 overall, still behind Ohio State and Notre Dame, yes, but starting to distance themselves from the rest of the SEC. I'm really excited about what you see from Mal Waldrep here as the latest commit, and I think that there's going to be more commits coming. You can see him right here playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium in the state championship game against Clay Chalkville, right? Jalen Mbakwe in Clay Chalkville was their victim, unfortunately, for Jalen Mbakwe. But look, this Alabama recruiting class is starting to take some real shape, and you're going to have 2 more recruiting weekends, big recruiting weekends this summer. You got a big one coming up this weekend and one coming up the weekend after that. And I think you're going to continue to add prospects. We talked about Dijon Lee a couple days ago. I think you're looking at Dawson Merritt, the outside linebacker out of Nebraska. I think this recruiting class is shaping up very, very nicely. And so, look, you can talk about 3-star prospect, Husky Harsin, all you want, but I think that this for a first class, that this staff, you got to understand, this staff started late on. They started in 3rd week of January, right when they were hired, and that's a little bit late in the cycle. You can see the staff getting ahead of the class of 2026. But I think they made up ground really, really nicely for the class of 2025, sitting there with a top 3 class in the country, and really, I still think picking and choosing the prospects that they want. People used to say, oh, Nick Saban, he doesn't recruit, he selects. And sure, some of these guys in this class have already been selected by other schools. But I think Kalen DeBoer, Courtney Morgan, Kane Womack, and his staff are doing their fair share of selecting. So Mal Waldrep becomes the 2nd offensive lineman in the class, joining Michael Carroll, 6'5", 320-pounder, 7A state champion last year with Central Phoenix City. He played high-level football in the state of Alabama. I don't know if he's as much of a finisher, as strong as Michael Carroll is. Michael Carroll looked really, really strong and finished a lot of blocks in the highlight tape that we got to watch on Monday. But I think that he's really, really technically sound, and I think that he plays with good pad level, and I think his hips. I think he plays through his hips, and because of that, you see him being a very, very effective blocker at the high school level, and I think he projects pretty well for the college game. He is the son of Mal Waldrep Sr., who also played at Alabama 1998 to 2002. So he's got Alabama in his blood. And so I think Alabama fans can get really, really excited about his commitment to the Crimson Tide. We'll see who's next to commit to Alabama. Is it going to be Dijon Lee? Is it going to be Dawson Merritt? We talked about Naeem Offord on Monday and how I didn't really feel like he was flippable. Naeem Offord, the number one player in the state of Alabama, has been committed to Ohio State since mid-February. But Naeem Offord's mother went out to social media. Now, she didn't say much with this, but she put together a collection of photos from this past weekend, and I think it dispels a lot of the online talk. The online talk over the weekend was, wow, look how unhappy he looks in these photos, and he did look unhappy in some of the photos that were shared over the weekend. But Naeem Offord's mother put together a little package, and he looks very, very, very happy. Now, obviously, it just depends on what side of the camera you're on and which second you're snapping the photo. But if a picture's worth 1,000 words, I think that I'm going to soften my stance just a little bit and say maybe he is flippable from Ohio State. So we'll see if Alabama can do that would be a huge coup. If you flipped Naeem Offord and you secured Dijon Lee, you brought in Chuck McDonald, you got Zamir Smith. Oh my gosh, that defensive back class would be very, very strong if you pulled in all four of those guys. So that's it for our recruiting. We'll keep tabs on the next guy to commit, and the next guy that does commit, we will talk about him. We'll show his highlight tape, and you can always jump in, tell us your thoughts on these commits at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're accepting all comments, questions, queries, or complaints. Let's talk a little basketball. We'll finish the show talking basketball. We'll start with Alabama, and then we will move to the NBA as game number 3 of the NBA Finals gets started tonight, 7:30 on ABC. But we're starting with the Crimson Tide because we're right here on Bama Central, BamaCentral.com. And Alabama got 2 opponents confirmed today. The first opponent that was confirmed early this morning is Houston. And we knew Houston was going to be in the field at the Players Era Invitational out there in Las Vegas Thanksgiving week. But I thought, okay, they're in the field. They're in the field with Rutgers, right? With Texas A&M, with a lot of other teams. But I thought, okay, if you're going out to Las Vegas, you've got to go play Houston again. You got to get them on the schedule. And you just look at this schedule, and it is absolutely brutal, especially from the second week of, the second, third week of November, right through the second, third week of December. The 11-15, November 15th, Alabama goes to Purdue, and then all the way through the 12-14 game, December 14, Alabama hosts Creighton. You're going at Purdue. You got Illinois and Birmingham. You got Houston out there in Las Vegas. And the other matchup got set today, the SEC-ACC Challenge. You're going to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Oh, my gosh. Okay. And then you have Creighton coming into Coleman Coliseum, the rival Creighton Blue Jays. So Alabama and Houston have played each other a couple of times already the last couple of years. They didn't play in 2023, this past season, the Final Four season, but they did play in 21. You all can remember the J.D. Davison finish. You had Alabama win 83-82, and maybe a couple of the Houston coaches were not so happy and kicked over a trash can. I think it was Jamal Shedd who stopped and picked up the trash. Got a lot of notoriety, positive notoriety for doing that. You remember the viral photo of Nate Oats trying to shake Kelvin Sampson's hand, and not necessarily very happy at the end because I think he thought that J.D. Davison committed a goaltend. Alabama wins the 2021 matchup right here in Tuscaloosa, 83-82. And then in 2022, the Crimson Tide went out to Houston, and gosh, this was a frustrating season, but a great stretch of the season. Alabama took on Baylor, took on Gonzaga, took on Houston in pretty quick succession in the non-conference portion of their season. Alabama goes out to Houston and falls behind, double digits at halftime, but was able to scratch and claw their way back. And that's really where I thought that, okay, this team in this season might be sparking in the right direction. It never really happened for them as they lost, in the first round of Notre Dame. But it went out, they fought back, and they beat Houston. They crawled back into that game and beat Houston 72-65. And so Kelvin Sampson is 0-2 against Nate Oats. And so I'm looking forward to round number 3 with the Houston Cougars out there in Las Vegas at the Players Era Invitational. And it's going to be just another brutal game as Nate Oats just loads up his schedule. And really, I mean, you thought Nate Oats has been pretty clear over the last couple of years about, we're going to load up the non-conference schedule. We're going to test ourselves early. It's going to pay dividends in the long run. We're looking for quality wins. We're looking to prepare ourselves for the SEC season. And then every single year, it seems like he raises the bar for the program. We thought last year was a really difficult non-conference schedule. And it was. It absolutely was. But every year, I mean, you could go back to the 2 years ago. It's a really difficult non-conference schedule, Gonzaga and Birmingham and all kinds of things. Every year he's raising the bar on what a quote-unquote difficult non-conference schedule is. The other big game that got confirmed today is the SEC-ACC Challenge. Now, Alabama didn't really have a whole hand in this. It was more so the powers that be above. But Alabama draws a trip to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And this excites me for a couple of different reasons. The main reason is I've never been to Chapel Hill, and I would love to see a game over in the Dean Dome. But that's the first reason. The secondary reason is if Alabama goes to Chapel Hill, I think there is a much higher likelihood of North Carolina coming back to Tuscaloosa. And goodness gracious, if you know me at all, you know I love brands and I love big programs. And, we talked about it when Texas came to Tuscaloosa. I will be utterly moved to have North Carolina come into Coleman Coliseum for a basketball game. Now, that's not on the schedule, but I think that the winds I think the whispers and the smoke kind of leans that direction in the future. Not in 2024, obviously, not in this coming up season, but I would be very, very excited about that. Now, secondarily, you look at the history between the two programs, especially we're only going to look at the recent history, really, maybe because it favors Alabama. But in the recent history between these two programs, Alabama beats North Carolina 103-101. What was that? A couple overtime game at the Phil Knight Invitational out there in Oregon, out there Pacific Northwest in 2022. And then in the Sweet 16 this past season, beats North Carolina again 89-87 to get to the Elite Eight. At that point, that was the furthest that Alabama had been in the NCAA tournament. So that was a huge win. And we remember Grant Nelson having himself a very, very good game against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, you've got other layers here as well. The Jaron Stevenson layer is on very, very thick, in my opinion. Jaron Stevenson, obviously, you guys are following the program, committed to Alabama over North Carolina. He reclassified and committed to Alabama. And there was some theories of, he's reclassified, and so North Carolina can't take him, and thus Alabama, you get the leftovers. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but what I do know now is that Jaron Stevenson in year number 2 in college basketball is going to go back to his really home area and take on the North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm very, very excited about this season, this upcoming season, and the schedule is just utterly brutal. And people can say, man, Nate Oats, you're scheduling too hard. Nate Oats, you're challenging yourself too much. I don't think there's such thing as too much for Nate Oats in this program. I think if he thought he could get the Boston Celtics on this schedule, if he thought he could resurrect the 92 Dream Team, whoever, build the best basketball team in the world, I think Nate Oats would love to play them and challenge himself against that program or against that team. There's a lot of talk on Monday about Dan Hurley staying with the UConn Huskies, and you've got some segments of the Alabama faithful saying, I wish he would have left, then it would have opened the door for Nate Oats to be the best basketball coach in college basketball. I don't think that Nate Oats really would have wanted that. You saw it yesterday down there in Florida. Nate Oats, along with Preston Murphy, recruiting at an elite event. They were spotted and photographed right next to Dan Hurley and his assistant. I think he likes having that bar to shoot for. Let's challenge ourselves. Let's raise the bar. Let's raise the expectations around the program. You've heard him this year, this offseason, talking about national championship expectations. And I think that really this scheduling philosophy, you look at blue bloods of college basketball, the Dukes, you look at the Kansases, you look at North Carolina and UConn, they have traditionally scheduled extremely hard. Now, of course, they've got this different bye games at play on their schedule, but traditionally you're seeing Kansas and you're seeing Duke going out to some of these events. You go out to oh my gosh, just drew a big old blank. The event out there in Hawaii, the Maui Invitational. Thank you. The Maui Invitational. You see Kansas taking on. You've seen Kansas taking on the better programs in the SEC when it was the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Now that it's the ACC SEC Challenge, I'm through. I mean, last year they gave us Clemson. And now Clemson turned out to have a nice little tournament run, meeting Alabama in the Elite Eight. But really, they didn't have a great season, and they really weren't a great team. You could argue the same for Alabama, but I was not very thrilled with the matchup of getting Clemson last year, getting drawn in with Clemson last year. I thought that was, and it might have been my own sensitivity, but I thought it was a little bit disrespectful. Like, come on, Alabama's been growing past the, higher than Clemson is in the ACC. And I think that the powers that be acknowledged that with this decision to draw Alabama with North Carolina this coming season. Now, also, what's going to be interesting is the Auburn Tigers going to Duke. So this state's going to get matched up with North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, the two powerful programs in Alabama against the two powerful programs in North Carolina. It's going to be a hellacious day on the twitter.com or on the x.com. And I'm going to look forward to being a part of it and really ingesting what will be, I think, a great SEC ACC challenge. Nate Oats loads it up again, loads up a huge schedule. He's got in the span of how many days? This is right at a month. In 30 days, you're taking on Purdue, Illinois, Houston, North Carolina, Creighton, and you've got a couple other marquee programs that are out at the Players Era Invitational in Las Vegas for that Thanksgiving week. So it's a great time. I know that we talked about Alabama football yesterday, and we talked about the schedule. We broke down the schedule with our friend Mason Woods. If you wanted to check that out, we went through game by game to break down the schedule, wins and losses. But I'm much more excited about Alabama basketball. So that's going to do it for our Alabama portion. We're about to turn it over to our friend Matt Guzman of SpursCentral. He and I chatted about Jerry West. He and I chatted about the NBA Finals. We talked about who our favorite coaches are in the NBA and much, much more. So I appreciate Matt joining us. And this was my conversation with my friend Matt Guzman. Welcome back into the Joe Gaither Show. We're going to keep things rolling as the NBA is continuing its championship series. The NBA Finals game number 3 tonight at 7:30. You can watch it on ABC. The Boston Celtics are up 2-0, but is there a little chink in the armor? We're about to talk about the finals. We'll talk about Tim Duncan today, maybe Greg Popovich's likability, and some unfortunate NBA news as well with our friend Matt Guzman of SpursCentral on SI. You can follow Matt Guzman at MattGZMan on the Twitter machine, and we appreciate each and every week him joining us, giving us some expertise. I'm the casual. I like the basketball, but you are studying it. You're living it. You're covering the Spurs and many other. If you go to Inside the Spurs and SpursCentral.com, you can really see a lot of other NBA coverage from Matt Guzman. Matt, how's your week been going?
It's been good. I just moved out here to Kansas City, so I'll be here for the summer, but getting adjusted, getting used to it. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, thank you so much for having me, and I hope your move goes well, and the adjustment period is not too long. When we woke up today, Matt, let's start with the biggest, probably big picture news, as it was very sad. As we woke up today, we found out that the logo, Jerry West, has passed away at the age of 86 years old. So Jerry West, multiple-time NBA champion, once as a player and many times as an executive. What is the reaction around the league? What's your reaction? And let's talk about Jerry West's impact on the game.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, like, you wake up and see that kind of news. It's he's an older guy, so it wasn't, out of the blue, but at the same time, it's something where, you never want to see that kind of thing, He definitely changed the game. As you mentioned, he's the logo. A lot of people don't actually really know that. Some people don't really know where the logo comes from. Well, it was him. It's not LeBron James. It's not Stephen Curry. It's somebody like Jerry West, because, it's iconic. And back in the day, I mean, he was one of the best players in the league. And, and he was a big impact to basketball. Absolutely. So, tough to see him go, but it's good that he got a good long life. 86 years, pretty good. So
what do I have? I think I have 3, 4, 5 championships as an executive with the Lakers. Six with the Lakers, actually, and then 2 with the Warriors, and then one as a player. So 9-time NBA champion, and you could just go down the list of his accomplishments. Look, the funny thing that I saw today that I just get your thought on is, Jerry West wanted to go be with the Lord before the Celtics won another championship. His hatred for the Boston Celtics was well documented. But really, as a basketball mind, I mean, obviously his playing days, he won the NBA final, or he won the Finals MVP in a losing effort, and maybe we'll see a mirroring little parallel this year with Luka Doncic. But just the way that he saw the game, and I think modernized basketball, and obviously with the Golden State Warriors putting all those 3-point shooters out there. Obviously Curry with the gold star as a 3-point shooter, but really just so many shooters. And now you're seeing kind of that style be more and more prevalent throughout the NBA.
Absolutely, and before Curry, there was guys that, like Kareem, who made that skyhook a very popular shot. Before him, it was guys like, way back, I don't know how many people were able to copy, what Wilt was doing back in the day, but I'm sure he had an influence on people in the way that they wanted to play the game of basketball. Jerry West was one of those icons, and he had the benefit of one of the biggest stages in basketball with the Lakers, whether he was a coach or a player. I mean, he had the fan base, loving him, liking him. And so I think it's one of those things where as the NBA evolves, there's going to be, I'm sure that there's going to be kids that want to block shots like Victor Wembanyama the way they used to want to shoot threes like Stephen Curry. It's always going to be changing. And Jerry West was just one of those icons, very, very pivotal to, I guess, like you said, the modernization of the NBA. So it's definitely some good stuff that he was able to do.
All right, so let's take it into the actual action. Tonight, the NBA Finals game number 3 gets going in Dallas. It's the first time the series has gone to Dallas. Dallas is in an 0-2 hole, losing game number 1, 107-89, and losing game 2, 105-98. Really was never in game 1. Kind of hung around in game 2, but faded away. Can Dallas get themselves back into the series, or has Boston basically take it? Basically, it's inevitable for Boston at this point.
Well, I think there's kind of two sides to it, right? Because to this point, the Boston has been the better team. They've shattered that narrative that they were going to get beat by whoever was out of the West. They've proven not only do they belong, but I mean, they're a favorite. And, they came out, they took care of business on their home court, didn't let Luka get one. But there's something to be said, because the second game came a lot closer than the first one did. The Mavs kind of figured it out a little bit on the road, which is a good thing for them and their momentum. So now that it's going back to Dallas, it's really going to rest on them and how well they can play and benefit from the home court advantage. It's going to be things like starting fast or stopping runs from the Celtics whenever they start, instead of letting them go on for 16, 17 points. This is a game that the Mavs absolutely have to win, because if they go down 3-0, they're done. They're done. No team has ever done it, and I don't believe Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are going to be the first to do it.
All right, so there is a little bit of injury concern for the Boston Celtics. Kristaps Porzingis over the last day or so has a torn medial retinaculum. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a medical term that I have never seen in my 34 years on this earth, and maybe 24 years watching sports. What in the world's going on with Kristaps Porzingis, and will it hold him out tonight?
Well, he's listed as questionable, so not much is known whether or not he's going to be able to play or not. I assume they're going to want him to be good to go. I assume that, you've only got a few games left, and maybe the Celtics are even going to take it as far as to say, we have 2 games left on this series. You need to go play. They might be viewing it that way. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't play tonight, especially because he was able to play the last game. But I mean, like you, I had no idea what that meant, what that looked like. And supposedly it was unrelated to the injuries he'd already been dealing with, which is good. It's not a re-aggravation or anything like that. But I'm curious to see how it's going to affect him on the court, if he's going to have to take any minutes restrictions or anything like that. But I mean, this is the home stretch of the season. I believe he's going to want to be out there.
Got to suck it up. The Celtics have been much, much better with Kristaps Porzingis on the court. I believe my amateur brain has it down to it's an ankle injury that if it's not the end of the world, but it could create maybe some tendon, maybe a tendon could pop out of place, and that would be the painful injury. That would be the I guess more serious injury. But yeah, we'll get to know what a torn medial retinaculum is, and we'll see if he can play through it. On the flip side, Luka's not exactly healthy either. I mean, he's averaged 29 points, 9.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists through the first 2 games. So amazing numbers. But Luka's dealing with what? Abdominal, midsection, kind of thoracic back issue. What's the latest? What do you know about Luka Doncic and how he's fighting through what he's dealing with?
So he's also questionable because of that chest injury that he's been dealing with. And I know there's a couple of photos that surfaced of him pregame, with this huge wrap on his chest and both legs and casts, like he's doing everything that he can to be on that court because he knows that without him, the Mavs don't even have a shot. He's definitely viewing it as we have, I think he's viewing it as we have 5 games to go. And I think that's kind of what he's entering the game thinking is like, I have to be able to be there. I have to be able to support my team. He's one of those players where, he's dealing with all his injuries. He's still going to go out and give you 30. You're not going to be able to quite tell that he's being, maybe he'll look a little slow. Maybe he'll look a little bit, sore. But at the end of the day, he's not going to let that affect him. And so as far as I'm concerned, I think he's good to go. And he's going to go out and do everything he can.
We're talking to Matt Guzman from inside the SpursCentral. I got to get used to that. From SpursCentral on SI. There we go. That's what we want. Matt Guzman from SpursCentral on SI. About the NBA Finals, as game number 3 gets underway tonight at 7:30 on ABC. Okay, so can Luka Doncic find any help? I mean, Kyrie, what's going on, man? A very bad game 1. Can they find any help for Luka Doncic as he's fighting through these injuries?
Well, last season that was kind of the big issue was, despite Luka and Kyrie being on the same team, they just couldn't quite figure it out. And obviously that tank ended up, it gave them Derek Lively. I'll give them that, right? But it did not go exactly how they had planned. They didn't catapult into a super high draft pick. So they kind of came at it this year knowing like, hey, we've got to make this work or we're about to look like one of the biggest fools in the league because a lot of people did not like that Kyrie trade when it first happened. They proved all of those people wrong this season. They got to where they were. They were very competitive in a highly competitive Western Conference. And not only did they get to the playoffs, they made it out of the West. They're in the finals for a reason. And so, for Kyrie Irving to have been struggling as the last couple of games, it's been unlike what he's done all season long and in the playoffs. That's the reason they're in the finals is because Kyrie has been going crazy. He's got to step it up a little bit more. And I hope that him being at home will hopefully do that and get some good basketball in there for him. But that's kind of, I think, what things are looking like over there.
All right, the last time you joined us, we both settled on Boston in 6. I think they're both of those predictions are looking pretty safe right now as we get ready for game number 3 this evening in Dallas. Let's step outside the finals real quick. And you're wearing a Los Angeles Lakers shirt, so let's talk about the Lakers and their whiff, or maybe I don't want to say a whiff because I don't really know that I don't really think that their pursuit of Dan Hurley was necessarily that serious. Please correct me. Do you think that the Lakers whiffed on hiring Dan Hurley, and because he's passing on the Lakers job, he's returning to UConn? We talked about that on the Monday edition of the show. Where do the Lakers turn next?
Right. I think I wouldn't say they whiffed on it because at the end of the day, they made him the offer. It was him who turned it down. I don't know. I think in the position that he was in over there, I don't know that he would have accepted any amount of money because unless it was in the billions or something ridiculous, because I think he really liked what he was building at UConn. He's got back-to-back national titles. He's looking for a 3-peat. That was completely his choice. He wanted to stay. It wasn't anything against the Lakers. It was just, I like what I have here. I don't want to leave. Now, to your point, I don't know if Dan Hurley was going to be the guy to make them multi-time national champions, world champions, or, how that would have worked, especially with LeBron and the dynamic that typically follows a head coach in LeBron. So I don't know what that would have looked like, but at the same time, I think the Lakers did their due diligence. They looked for Dan Hurley. They tried to get him, and now they're going to kind of have to look elsewhere.
Well, all the rumors or everything that this person over here, this casual sees is, okay, it's JJ Redick, LeBron James podcast buddy. Is that the next move, or is there a real coach out there to go in there and revitalize this franchise?
Right. Well, there's always those assistants. I mean, they got Darvin Ham as an assistant from Milwaukee, and at the time, it looked like he was going to be the next rising star because he had done such great things with Giannis. And obviously, that didn't end up being the case. Now, there's a couple names like James Borrego, Steve Clifford, guys like that the Lakers might be on the Lakers' radar. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to pan out. Now, JJ Redick's an interesting case, as you mentioned. I mean, he's got that relationship with LeBron already, and I fully believe if he were to step into the role, he would bring a different perspective to that head coaching position, one that's very, very player oriented, because he's a former player. He's young. He knows he's got a very high sense of basketball IQ, just like LeBron. I mean, that's what kind of makes them very compatible. Obviously, he doesn't have any head coaching experience, so there are going to be parts of the game that he's not going to know how to handle, or he's going to have to learn very quickly how to handle if he does end up being the next coach. But I don't totally hate the move. I really don't. I think that LeBron would benefit from having somebody that sees the game the way he does, that can kind of help, coach up and build a system and build an offense and a game plan around that player mentality.
I'm kind of with you. I know that people would slam it because he doesn't have any coaching experience. But every time, I mean, and maybe I'm just biased. We've talked about podcast on this show before with you. But every time I hear him speak, it sounds just like, oh my gosh, he's speaking a different language. He's speaking the language of basketball, and so. Absolutely. I think that it might. I mean, while there would be a lot of learning on the job. As far as technical knowledge and game planning ability, I think that he would do a pretty fine job.
I think so too. I do. I think what he brings to the table is, like I said, that unique perspective, one that not any other head coach in the league truly has. Darvin Ham was a former player, but he wasn't as basketball IQ heavy the way that JJ Redick is. Like you said, it's a different language. Like he sees the game of basketball differently, and I don't see anything wrong with your head coach having that kind of a skill.
All right, we're talking to Matt Guzman from SpursCentral on SI, and one of the pieces that he wrote this past week was about Greg Popovich. We're talking coaches, so we'll just transition right in to Greg Popovich. Greg Popovich was named the most likable coach in the NBA. What? We see Greg Popovich on the clips on Twitter, and he's being mean to reporters, and he's, has that rough and gruff style. How did he get named the most likable coach in the NBA? He rigged the poll.
You know what? It's not so far-fetched. It's interesting. I was shocked to see that in the study as well, because, I mean, Greg Popovich, like you said, he's that rough and gruff. He's kind of hard to crack. He's a little sarcastic, sometimes mean. It's interesting. But the thing was, I mean, the media was not the people voting on these coaches. These were NBA fans that were surveyed, and from the sounds of it, well, I think the other important little number to note was that out of everybody asked, they basically were asked, okay, who's your team? And if they said the Spurs, they say, do you know who your head coach is? If they said the Hawks, they said, do you know who your head coach is? And so I guess the second most Spurs fans knew about Greg Popovich versus any other team in the league. I think only Steve Kerr had him beat. With Warriors fans knowing him a little bit more. But, I mean, if you're a Spurs fan, the way that city is, the way that San Antonio is rooted in that culture of the team and of the players and of the coach, because he's been there for so long. If you like the Spurs, you like Greg Popovich, because what he did was bring 5 championships to your team. Whether you're young or old, if you're old, you remember him. If you're young, you were told stories of that greatness. You grew up watching your parents get excited about the Spurs. And so he's just kind of been that staple in San Antonio and to that team for so long. So it makes perfect sense to me that the fans would love him.
I think so too. The longevity factor, basically, you noted in your article that he is the longest tenured coach in the NBA, right. And sometimes that familiarity breeds, good vibes from the fan base. So let me ask you. Let me put you on the spot. Greg Popovich, most likable coach in the NBA. I wrote down 5 names of NBA coaches. I'll go second because I don't want to poison your well here. Who is Matt Guzman's 5 most likable coaches in the NBA? You can go anywhere, any of the head coaches, but who are your 5 most likable coaches in the NBA?
That's a good question. I like this. I think I would put Greg Popovich up there for sure at either number 1 or 2, just because I respect what he does and the way he can develop players and young talents, especially. Next to him or right behind him, Eric Spoelstra. I think that what he's done for the Heat has been incredible. I think that he's very, very, very well spoken, very poised. He leads his team in a way that you have to. He almost demands that respect from you without doing so much as talking on a podium or introducing himself. He's I respect his journey to get where he was. I put Steve Kerr up there. I know that he's had a little bit of people haven't exactly agreed with the stuff he's been doing this past year, as Curry's career is starting to wane. But I think that he's built a complete, he built a dynasty, and he ran that dynasty as the coach, and he actually came from the Spurs, so I'm a little partial to him as well. But I like Steve Kerr, and then I'm going to put Mike Budenholzer up there. I liked what he did with the Milwaukee Bucks whenever they won that title. I think he was a great fit over there. They fired him. I was confused as to why they fired him. But now that he's back in the NBA with the Suns to replace Frank Vogel, I'm excited to see what he can do with that roster over there. And rounding out number 5, I have Darko Rajakovic from Toronto. I really like him, and specifically this one, I guess, I forget when it was. It was a few months back, during the second half of the NBA season. The Raptors and the Lakers faced off against each other, and the Lakers had 31 free throws. The Raptors had like 10. And Darko went crazy when he was asked about that disparity in free throws. He basically said Scotty Barnes was an all-star, the face of the league, that he didn't understand why, they wouldn't get the same amount of calls as the Lakers. And he just like slammed the table. He was yelling and screaming. I gained a lot of respect for him that day.
All right, so we share 2 on our list. I also put Greg Popovich, and I'm probably biased because of the longevity factor. And he gives me a lot of, people talk about, he's mean to the media, but he gives me a lot of Nick Saban vibes. Like, you just got to understand the dry humor. It's not being mean. He's just very dry, in my opinion. And so I appreciate that. He's on my list. I don't know about number 1. I didn't rank him 1 through 5. The other one that we share is Eric Spoelstra. Because of his journey coming through the film room and everything he's built. I mean, he managed, oh my gosh, think about the challenge of managing the big 3 to a couple of titles. And obviously they left 2 on the table, losing in the finals, but you won 2, and he's continued to perpetuate Heat culture. And while they haven't really won a title since then, they've always been at the top end of the Eastern Conference. And I like really his approach to the game and his approach to basketball. My other 3 are just kind of personal favorites, and that's what this is all about. Billy Donovan hasn't always found the success in the NBA that he found at the University of Florida, but I will forever be influenced by what he did at Florida, winning back-to-back national championships. And I think that he's a good basketball mind, and he treats his players with respect. He holds them to a high standard, but he treats them with respect, so I like that. And then I got Chauncey Billups on my list. Chauncey Billups, head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, only because I'm also influenced by watching him play with the Detroit Pistons, when they were winning their NBA championships. I was maybe 14, 15 or so, so I was really into Chauncey Billups, and that little guy is running the entire show, and he's got the respect of Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace. So I really like Chauncey Billups. And lastly, I put Joe Mazzulla in my list because of the Rain Man kind of factor of you heard it a couple nights ago, just rattling off plays throughout the game, and if this happened, then that happened, then this. I just like the way that he has really great memory, and I think that's a impressive factor for a coach. But also, just on a personal standpoint, I like the way that he professed his faith a couple weeks ago when they talked about, are you impressed or are you proud of having 2 black coaches in the NBA Finals? And I think that's very great. But he responded by saying, I wonder how many of those coaches were Christian, and so I appreciate him taking the platform to represent his faith. So those are my 5, and I think you have a great 5. If you guys want to chime in, y'all always can jump in on the social media machines at Joe Gaither 6 and let us know your favorite 5 NBA coaches. We'd be happy to have that. Let's keep going and talk about one of your other articles. Sure. Why Tim Duncan's leadership style could be the blueprint for Spurs' Victor Wembanyama, right there on SpursCentral.com on SI. You write about Victor Wembanyama and his influence from Tim Duncan. Now, this casual over here has seen Tim Duncan on the end of the bench, in the Spurs coaching rotation. And so I ask you, what's Tim Duncan's actual role in the Spurs, and how has he influenced the first year of Victor Wembanyama?
Absolutely. Now, a couple of years back, he was, like you said, he was on the bench. So he actually did have that officially an assistant coach. He'd be up on the sidelines and kind of coaching up the players. But he kind of quickly realized that wasn't for him. And Greg Popovich came out, I think it was 2022. He was like, yeah, I've given up on trying to get Duncan to coach. Because Popovich revealed that was his goal. He wanted Tim Duncan to be able to kind of, I guess, in a perfect world, even take his spot. And so he kind of wanted to impart that wisdom and like, here's how you can be a coach, because he knew that Tim Duncan, I guess, had those qualities, but just wasn't the calling for him. So this season, he wasn't an official coach on the roster, but he'd be around in shoot-arounds and kind of be there to kind of coach up not only Victor, but the older players. Same as Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili have made a couple of appearances at shoot-arounds for the Spurs. So he's not an official coach, but he's absolutely a mentor by every means of the word. Whenever Victor first arrived in San Antonio, he had a dinner, I think, with it was Manu and David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and it wasn't Tony Parker. I forget who else was there, but there was another one there, and they kind of just sat around at a table and told him, look, this is what it's going to be like. Here's what we expect from you. Here's how we can help. Let us know what we can do for you. And that was something that Victor was very appreciative of. And he did he recorded a little video message for Spurs and for the fan base after winning Rookie of the Year. And he was saying that, from day one, the Spurs culture meant having those role models. And he kind of thanked them for what they had done. And so what I was getting at in the article was that, Victor and Tim Duncan are obviously two very different players, but you can't ignore the parallels of their journeys so far. They're both centers. They're both foreign centers. I mean, Tim Duncan was from the British Virgin Islands, and Victor's obviously from France. They're both number one picks. They're both centers. They're both big men. And so, there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn there. And at the same time, Victor's not the super flashy guy. He'll pull some moves on you, right? But he's not like Anthony Edwards, where he's kind of showboating a little bit. And so I kind of recognize some of that because Victor's very poised in his post-game interviews. He knows what it takes to be good in the media scheme, but also on the basketball court. And I think that there's a lot that he could draw from Tim Duncan.
We've been talking to Matt Guzman, and you're reading all of his coverage on SpursCentral.com on SI, SpursCentral on SI.com. There we go. We'll work out how it rolls off my tongue a little better. Matt, you predicting tonight's game? Are you predicting the Mavericks get one back and get back into the series or not?
I do think that they'll win tonight, and then I think they're done. I think I'm going to revise my official prediction to go Celtics in 5. I'll have them closing out the series at home after Game 5.
Well, that'll make a lot of the Celtics fans happy after they've waited for a long, long time since their last title. What was it, 2008? The Big Three? Anything is possible?
I believe so.
It's been a long time since I was a senior in high school, Matt, so they've been waiting a long time for that. I appreciate your time, man. We'll catch up with you next week. Make sure you follow him at MattGZMan on the Twitter machine, and you can keep up with all of his great work across the Sports Illustrated family of networks. I appreciate your time, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great one.
Absolutely. That's Matt Guzman joining us from Spurs Central on SI. We appreciate him joining us, and we appreciate you guys joining us. That was going to be our show today. We appreciate everybody tuning in to us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You watched us at Joe Gaither 6, or you watched us on the Bama Central YouTube channel or on the Spurs Central YouTube channel. We appreciate them having us. You can always subscribe to the show on a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You can find the show, The Joe Gaither Show, on Bama Central. So I appreciate everybody watching us. We'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither 6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.